So we are going to continue with our discussion on the medicinal plants. And today we will look at the remaining plants, and we'll also discuss about the plants that are used for bio cleansing, for the various processes like MS purgation. But before that, there were some more plants of Ayurveda which we couldn't complete in the last class. So we start with that, and then we go on to the plants which are used for cleansing procedures. So the first plant that we are going to discuss today, I'm sure you all know about this. Can you identify? Yes. So this is aloe vera, and this is used in Ayurveda for multiple purposes. But first and foremost, the name for this plant in Ayurveda is Kumari, which means young girl. So the name of the plant in Sanskrit actually means a young girl, because it's very useful for young girls who are suffering from problems of menstruation and who need the herb cools down their system. It's good for the hair, it's good for the skin, it's good for burns, and so this is a plant which is used also. It's helpful in liver problems, but it's able to regulate the menstrual cycles, and it's useful in wound healing. And so we look at some of the Ayurvedic uses of this plant. The gel of aloe vera is taken out, and it's also dried, and it becomes a blackish substance which is used in. And this blackish substance, which is the dried gel, is very helpful in relieving swelling, and especially for disc problems. If you apply this, it can relieve the inflammation in the nerves. And so multiple uses are there, and we look at its profile. So it is having a cold potency, and it is bitter and sweet. It's a laxative, so it helps to move the bowels, but it is said to be very, very sharp, and so overuse of aloe can cause problems. It's helpful in liver diseases, in spleen disorders, in kapha diseases, in fever, in burns, in vesicles, skin diseases, and also in excessive bleeding, but it also stimulates menstruation, according to Ayurveda. So there are many medicines which we give in which aloe is an important ingredient. So if you look at, I'm sorry, there's a problem in the slide. The name has got superimposed on the table. So it acts on recta or blood, and it splits the stool, it produces urine, it's good for the skin, spleen, liver, and eyes. And it's also used in cuts and burns and skin disease as well as liver diseases. And some of the major formulations in which it is an ingredient has also been described here. So in aloe vera, you can see that there will be a yellow substance inside. Have you seen it? If you cut open aloe vera, you can see a yellowish substance, and that has to be removed before use. Only that gel should be used. So aloe vera is also good for the eyes, and it's extremely cooling. But excessive use has been reported to cause aggravation of vata. And so we have to use this in moderation. So this is a quick overview. So if you take this aloe gel, if you take it crude, then it has got more laxative action because of the presence of an alkaloid called as aloin. And when you process the gel, then the aloin content is reduced, and then it doesn't have that laxative action. There is a resinous yellow aloin which I was mentioning, is removed to prevent excessive laxative action. So some animal studies have also shown that aloe has the ability to reduce tumor growth, but these are yet to be verified in humans. Even anti-hyperglycemic effect has been reported, and its use in type 2 diabetes is also, reported. But there are not enough studies in human beings to really confirm these effects. But in traditional medicine, it is used for healing wounds, for burns, for cuts, for female diseases like menstrual disorders, and also for liver diseases. So this is also a very well-known herb. This is the grapes. And according to Ayurveda, grapes is the best amongst the fruits. And if you look at grapes, there are two types, the really sweet one and the one which is sweet and sour. And Ayurveda recommends only the use of the sweet black grapes. The sweet black grapes is said to be the king of fruits, and because it can promote longevity. And today we know that there is a chemical in grapes, in the grape skin, and actually the grape skin has all the medicinal effects, which is why in Ayurveda, for medicinal purposes, it's the dry grapes that is used, what we call as Ricinus. And in the skin of the black grapes is this chemical called as resveratrol. And resveratrol is known, is being reported to have anti-aging effects. So grapes, black grapes especially, can promote longevity, and grape wine has also been found to be helpful in management of cardiovascular diseases. And dry grapes especially is also a mild laxative, and it's also a very good liver tonic. But most of its effects are obtained when you combine it with other herbs. So combination, grapes is even more potent when you combine with other herbs. And in our next webinar, where we will be completing this session on Ayurvedic oncology, I will give examples of some common formulations. So in Ayurveda, we do not use individual herbs, as I was mentioning earlier. We use combinations. And grapes is one of such herbs which work better in combinations than alone. And dry grapes is the choice medicine in Ayurveda. So this is grapes, and you can see this is the form in which it is used in Ayurveda, the black. So it is sweet, it's slightly laxative and heavy and cold. It's good for the eyes, it promotes growth, it's good for voice, it increases the output of fecus in urine, it's also good for the reproductive system. And the sour variety is actually not so good. It can cause hyperacidity, and so it's not recommended. Certain formulations, one of the major uses in Ayurveda is that it is used for protection of liver in combination with other herbs, and it's also a very good, very important ingredient of formulations that are used to treat alcoholism. And in a future webinar, I will be showing some case studies in which we are able to see the effect of certain formulations in which grapes is a major ingredient. So this is a summary today. Vitis vinifera. Again, there's a problem in this slide. The botanical name seems to be overlapping on the but I think it's still readable. It's this is the overall summary of the Ayurvedic properties of the herb. So the major uses in Ayurveda is for liver, for blood, for anti-aging effect. It's good for the eyes, helpful in alcoholism. It's also used in anemia, and we will look at some of the formulations. Medicinal effects are enhanced by combination. So to get the full benefits, we have to combine. So these are some of the modern studies which indicate that grapes, dry grapes, has an ability to maintain the health of the blood vessels, and therefore vascular damage can be prevented. So it also prevents blood pressure from developing. Actually, it increases the production of a hormone, nitric oxide, which actually prevents blood pressure from building up. So as I was mentioning, resveratrol is a very important chemical found in grapes, and this is seen in the skin and seeds. So if you want to get the benefits of grapes, you must eat the skin and the seeds. And there, this chemical is found in a concentration which is 100 times higher than the normal pulp. So fresh grape skin contains about 50 to 100 micrograms of resveratrol. So in that way, this is what Ayurveda tells, that grapes and raisins is a tool to help us to promote our lifespan. So here is another plant which grows down. It's very important, and I know that this grows in your own places. We'll have a closer look. This is a plant which fruits are very thorny. You can see here, these are the fruits of this plant. And this plant is known in Sanskrit as Gokshura, and the English name is Tribulus terrestris. So this is one of the most important diuretics used in Ayurveda. And it's a very powerful natural diuretic. So if you want to induce urination, even as simple, you can just put these fruits in boiled water and drink that water, and within a day you can find that urine output increases significantly. But the only thing is that it makes urine alkaline. So we have to be a little careful not to drink too much of Gokshura, because it can make the urine alkaline, and therefore if you are having infections and if you are taking some medicines like antibiotics, then we have to be careful to use this. So its action is mainly on the urinary system and also on the reproductive system. So let me ask a question. Does anybody, is this plant available in your region? The name of the plant is Tribulus terrestris. It's also sometimes called as puncture wine. Okay, so it's good to know that you know it and it could be available in your place. It should be used very judiciously. It also is a good reproductive tonic. It increases sperm count and semen in males. It works on the male reproductive system. Asparagus is a herb that works on the female reproductive system, whereas Gokshura or Tribulus is that which works on the male reproductive system. So this plant also in combination with certain other herbs like Gugulu. I hope you remember Gugulu, we discussed it in our previous webinar. So if you combine Gugulu and Gokshura, then it's a very good combination for management of prostate problems. In the early stages, you can prevent prostate from growing by using a combination of Gokshura and Gugulu. So here is this herb which is sweet, it is heavy. You can later look at these slides because these things you need to keep reading the properties of the plants for it to get imprinted in our memory. So these are more like reference material and I'm just reading it out. It's important for us to know which are the cold herbs and which are the hot herbs, which are the dry, which are the heavy. So some of these properties will be very helpful to remember when we decide which herb to use where. So as I said, this increases semen, it increases the strength of the body, it purifies the bladder, it does bladder cleansing, it stimulates digestion, and it is also nourishing. It alleviates vata, and it's used in urinary incontinence, in urinary stones, in diabetes, in dyspnea, cough, and also heart disease. But its major uses are for the urinary and the reproductive systems. So here is Tribulus terrestris, urinary reproductive system. It's a diuretic. And you know, there's another herb in Ayurveda which is also a very good diuretic. So these are two major diuretic drugs. The other one is called Punarnava, Arabia diffusa. So we have learned about a major diuretic mentioned in Ayurveda. So Tribulus terrestris has been found to improve sexual behavior in animals. So it does, there are evidence which shows that it actually works on the reproductive system. So it increases levels of testosterone and also its precursors, and also it has aphrodisiac activity. And it's also been found that it can be supplemented well for these purposes to enhance testosterone. And there are some studies which shows what are the active chemicals in this plant. And so most of these studies are on the effects of Tribulus terrestris on the male reproductive system. And the studies are very encouraging and confirms the claims made in the classical Ayurvedic texts. So we are going to run through many of these slides today because yesterday we focused in detail about some important plants. As I was mentioning, I hope you will be able to tell me, I don't know how this can be worked out, maybe you can communicate to Yana, about which of the plants are available for you and which are the plants totally not available. Because based on that, when we come to the treatment aspects, I can give advice on plants that you are likely to find in your own place, because otherwise it will not be practically useful. So please look at all these plants very carefully, and please let me know about the availability of these plants. So this is a very, very important plant in Ayurveda, and I don't know whether you are aware of it. It's a sacred plant in the Indian tradition, and it is called Bilwa or Eagle marmelos. This is supposed to be the worst amongst fruits. So if the grapes is the best, then ripe bilwa fruit is considered to be worst, whereas unripe is good. Unripe fruit has medicinal properties, and the leaves are used and the root is used. So this is a plant where many of its parts are used medicinally. It is supposed to be the sacred Lord Shiva. So it has also got a lot of religious importance in the Indian tradition. The leaves of the plant are chewed to control diabetes. It's supposed to have anti-diabetic activity, but experience shows that the anti-diabetic activity of this tree is actually very moderate. It's not really very significant, but along with other medicines, it's good to use this plant also as a supplement for management of diabetes. And actually, it's the roots that are used in medicine. And the roots have a very strong effect on digestion, on metabolism, and on the removal of micro wastes from the body. So it's a very good scavenger, and this herb also has action on the urinary system. It is used in combination with other herbs to cleanse the urinary system. And this is how the fruits look like, and these are the leaves. The leaves come as 3 leaflets, and each leaflet is shaped like an eye, and that is why it became associated with Lord Shiva, who has the third eye. So if you look at the leaf of this plant, people imagine that it is like the 2 eyes and the third eye of knowledge. So this is just, religious beliefs, and this is how the tree looks like. And here, this is a herb which is hot, dry, and it is very useful in recovery after diarrhea, dysentery. It's a stimulant and digestive. It pacifies vata and kapha. So another important action of this plant is that it can prevent or even pacify nausea and vomiting. So there are preparations in Ayurveda. So you can see that some of the plants that we are discussing today have impact on some major functions of the human body. Like grapes, if used in the right way, can prevent aging. And this eagle marmelos, if used in the right way, is a very good first aid medicine for vomiting. If you administer this root formulated in the right manner, it prevents nausea and vomiting and improves appetite. And so there are certain formulations which are used in Ayurveda which contain this herb as an ingredient. So you can see this herb works more on the upper alimentary tract, especially the stomach, whereas certain other herbs work on the colon or some on the intestines. So the action of Ayurvedic herbs are also very specific to specific organs and also on the alimentary system. So when you start studying the Ayurvedic herbs, it will be very helpful to understand and classify them in different ways. The ones which work on the urinary system, the ones which work on the reproductive system, the ones which work on the alimentary tract, and in the alimentary tract, which ones work on the stomach and which ones work on the intestines. So these things are very important to know before we can start using them in actual clinical practice. So this is agar marmelos, lungs, intestine, stomach, urinary system, used in diarrhea, amoebiasis, cough, asthma, insect bites, vomiting, and even kidney stones. And these are some of the major formulations in which it is an ingredient. So it promotes a smooth bowel movement, and a study revealed that the essential oil obtained from this tree is effective against 21 types of bacteria. And the unripe bale fruit, which Ayurveda considers to be more useful medicinally. It's very interesting to see that modern research is confirming these findings in Ayurveda, that unripe bale fruit is effective in management of giardiasis and rotavirus. So it does not actually have antimicrobial properties, but it can inhibit bacteria from invading the gut, and so we can prevent infection of the gut by bacteria by using the fruit of Vilva. So next is another plant which is very, very important and which has got a very organ specific action. This plant acts on the heart, specifically on the heart. And this is called as arjuna. Have you heard of arjuna, the plant arjuna? Yes, so this is a very specific tonic for the heart. So it almost works like a beta blocker sometimes. Is useful in controlling blood pressure. It's astringent, it is light and dry and hot. It can heal wound. It can also heal the heart from the injury that is sustained during a myocardial infarction. So the bark of Arjuna is used in medicine, and it is best administered as a milk decoction. So it's helpful to relieve symptoms due to cardiovascular diseases like fatigue, thirst, and tiredness. So the botanical name is Terminalia arjuna, and it works on Rakta and Meda. It can also reduce the fat deposits in the blood vessels, and its specific action is on the heart. And there are many anticoagulants present in this herb, which is why it for heart problems. It can improve the blood circulation to the heart. It nourishes the heart muscles. It regulates heartbeat, prevents arterial clogging, bleeding, hemorrhoids, and there are many important formulations in which it is an ingredient. So I do not know whether you are able to obtain this herb in your location. Probably you are able to buy it from India or other countries where it is grown. Okay, that's great. About the star fruit, I'm not sure. The star fruit is actually a different thing. It is carambola. So, yes, I agree that the fruit of this plant looks a little bit like the star fruit, but star fruit is different. So the botanical name of the star fruit is Averia carambola. So it's different. Yes, in all these herbs, you have to be careful not to use it in excess. But compared to other herbs like garlic, for example, there is less risk of internal bleeding when you use arjuna. So it's comparatively safe, but still overused because of the presence of anticoagulants. You have to use this herb with a little caution. So here is the next herb. Does anybody know about this herb? Has anybody seen this herb before? Even the shape is very suggestive of uh, what it is helpful for. So, what does the shape resemble? Can you guess? What comes to your mind when you see the plant? Which part of your body does this resemble? If you see the real plant, it looks like the long bones of the body made into a chain. So in Sanskrit, it is called as the chain of bones. That's a Sanskrit name, Asti Srinkhala. And really very useful in healing bones. So for healing from fractures. Its botanical name is Cissus quadrangularis. So I do not know whether this is available in your place, but it's very easy to grow. It's also a very nice garden plant. It's a climber. And it's used to treat fractures and other problems with the bones. So it is sweet, it is laxative, dry and light and hot. It improves semen, increases strength, and promotes union of bones. So this is a very important utility. It's also useful for ear diseases. The juice of this herb is used for treating infections of the ear, and but predominantly it's used for healing of bones. So some of the plants seem to indicate by their shape what organs they will act upon, and this is one such plant. So it's specific action on the bone. There are very few herbs which act directly on the bone, and this is one of those plants. It's slightly laxative, and it's used in bony swellings, in also in hemorrhoids, and so these are some of the major properties of this plant. Next is again a very interesting plant. I do not know whether you have seen this plant before. So this is again a very organ specific action. So we saw each plant targeting specific tissues or organs or systems of the body, and here is a plant that acts specifically on the liver, and this is called as Phyllanthus. So Phyllanthus niruri or Phyllanthus amaris. So you can see that the compound leaf, just below the leaf you can see the fruits. There are small fruits, and this is very typical. It almost looks like a miniature gooseberry amalaki. So it's sometimes called as the amalaki of the ground. So this plant is specifically useful for recovery from liver diseases. So the whole plant is crushed and made into a paste, and 5 to 10 grams are consumed for relief from jaundice, liver cirrhosis, and other such problems. But it's used again in combination with other herbs. It's a major ingredient of formulations that target the liver. And this is also very good in the management of bronchial asthma and also some diseases of the lungs. It grows as a weed in homes and in the backyards of homes in India, but I have no idea. Does anybody know whether this plant is available in your location? Okay, so this is definitely a plant which you may not be able to access. Okay, Suzanne seems to be quite familiar with most of the herbs. So it's also exported in a powder form, and some of my friends in Italy have actually used it. So do you know another important Ayurvedic herb which works on the liver? Does anybody know a very famous important plant in Ayurveda which works on the liver? No, not neem. There's another important plant. It's from the Himalayas. It's a small herb. It's called in Sanskrit as kutki. In Hindi, it's Picroryza kuroa. It's a very powerful liver tonic. And actually, along with this Phyllanthus, Picroryza is also added. And we also discussed in our earlier webinar about another plant that works on the liver, which is Eclipta alba. And these three can be combined actually to make a very good liver tonic. So some of the major Ayurvedic formulations that are found in the market have these herbs as ingredients. So this is the usage of this plant. So it's specifically working on blood and on liver, and it's used in hepatitis, liver diseases, colitis, and also gallstones and kidney stones. So now we are going to look briefly at some other important medicinal plants in Ayurveda. And can anybody recognize the salt from the Himalayan region? And this is called as Devadaru or Cedrus deodara. It's like a pine tree, and it's very helpful in cleansing chronic wounds, and it pacifies kapha and vata. and its seeds are actually eaten. The pine seeds, I think this is available in Russia also, pine seeds. It pacifies kapha and vata. It's helpful in obstruction, in flatulence, in swelling, and cough, fever. It removes kapha. It's very helpful in sinusitis and diseases of the upper respiratory tract. So here's a plant that works to cleanse kapha and remove the excess accumulation of kapha in the system. So it's the effect on the dhatu is rakta, and it's slightly laxative. So it works on the lungs, joints, and also respiratory system. And there, it's an ingredient of many important formulations. Now I have to keep repeating and asking this question when we discuss every plant. That is this plant available? It's an endangered plant in India. It's seen only in the Himalayan ranges. It's not available elsewhere. So it's also a little difficult for Ayurveda physicians in India to get large quantities of this plant. So I'm curious to know whether this is available in your place. I think in the Russian region, in very cold places, this plant seems to be available, and so maybe it is available in your location. So this plant is helpful along with Tinospora. So very simple formulation for rheumatoid arthritis is Devadaru plus dry ginger plus Tinospora cordifolia. It's a very simple combination. The three things together can very quickly reduce swelling from the joints in patients with rheumatoid arthritis and reduces inflammation. So I guess Devadaru is not available in your region. Can you identify this plant? I'm sure you should be able to. Okay. What about this plant that you're seeing on the slide now? Is this available? Are you familiar? Have you heard of the castor? So this is the plant. This is the actual plant from which castor oil. Okay, yeah. So in Ayurveda, this plant is very, very helpful because even the leaves are very useful for fermentation. I mean, fermentation with the leaves of this plant can relieve pain, swellings, and other vata kind of problems. It's especially useful in the management of pain, low back pain. So, but you need to get the fresh plants. So apart from castor oil, that is what I wanted to indicate, that the roots and leaves are widely used in Ayurveda. So the oil is used as a purgative and it has got limited utility. But medicinally, it's the leaves. Leaves are used externally and the roots are used internally. So this is the castor plant. And it's called as Eranda in Sanskrit. So it's hot and heavy and bitter. It's a good digestive stimulant. It relieves pain and it's strengthening. It pacifies vata. So it's used in bladder pain, in hernia, in reverse peristalsis, in spleen diseases, in flatulence, and as well as abdominal distension. So very important herb working on the lower intestines, especially the large intestine. It improves and maintains the tonicity of the intestine. So this is Ricinus communis. So it specifically works on the muscle tissue, mamsa dhatu. And it has got a purgative action, especially the oil has purgative action, but not so much the roots. The roots is only a mild laxating action on, and it improves the peristalsis of the intestines. So it works on the stomach and intestine and spleen. It's useful in the management of abdominal colic, back pain, skin diseases, as well as cough. No, there is no fermentation. What I meant was fermenting, which means that we slice up the leaves and then tie it in a piece of cloth and then use it as a, heat it and then apply on the body for inducing sweating. Or we boil leaves in water and the steam is applied on the painful parts. The roots are used as decoction. That means we boil roots in water and take it. So leaves are used only externally. Leaves are not administered internally. Yes, even castor oil can be used. So in places where castor plant is not available, you have to use the oil, but leaves have very specific and quick action. So you can add a little, slice some lemon and then also chop the leaves very well and tie them into a cloth, into a bowl, and then you use heat some oil and then dip this cloth in that oil and then apply it on the low back. In case patients who have pain due to disc problems, this gives instantaneous pain relief. It's very good for relieving pain. Okay, so in Ayurveda we use a cloth. So this is about castor. Next we have a very important plant in Ayurveda, which is called Jatamansi. Have you heard of this plant, Jatamansi? It's called Nardostachys. Jatamansi. Okay, it's a very powerful herb to induce sleep. It's a tranquilizer. It's a very powerful tranquilizer. So it's good in psychological problems to calm the mind. But overuse can make the mind very dull, so it should not be used too much. It's a very powerful herb. It's bitter, astringent, and sweet. It's light and it's cold, and it increases intellectual capacity, improves complexion and strength. So it's good in blood disorders and burning sensation. It's cooling and calming on the mind. So this is Jatamansi, which has got also a very strong smell. So So this is probably, we studied, it's good when you study one herb to look at other herbs which also may have similar properties. So we looked at some herbs which work on the mind. So we had Brahmi, and then we had Ashwagandha, two herbs which work on the mind. Brahmi really induces a sattvic state of the mind. Ashwagandha stimulates a rajasic state, and Jadamansi is tamasic. I hope you know what is Rajas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Yes, yes. So Brahmi is Sattva, Ashwagandha is Rajas, and Jadamamsi is Tamas. So we need to understand that if you overuse Jadamamsi, it can make your mind very tamasic. So this is the plant, works on the Rakta, it can reduce the output of stools, it works in brain and used in psychiatric diseases, in skin diseases. Here's again a wonder herb in Ayurveda, which has also been researched quite extensively in modern times. Are you able to identify? So I can give a clue. This herb is used in Parkinson's disease. It's a very important herb in Ayurveda for treatment of Parkinson's disease. So in case you do not know about this, I will identify the plant. It's called as Mucuna pruriens. Have you heard of this plant? The Sanskrit is actually Kapikachu. It's known as devil's beans in English. So this is supposed to be helpful in increasing the dopamine content in the brain. It's one natural source for dopamine, and that is why this is used in the management of Parkinson's disease. Apart from that, it's also a very powerful spermatagogue, which means it stimulates sperm production. It is said to do so. So in Ayurveda, it is not, yes, yes, it is widely used in the management of Parkinson's, and it really gives very good results. So it is Vata pacifying, it's Vata Hara, it promotes growth, and it's a very good aphrodisiac and increases strength. So it's a very important plant in Ayurveda. So since we have many plants to go, yesterday in the previous webinar we looked at some plants in a little detail, but today we are going to go through it a little bit faster. So we have still some more plants to complete, so I'm moving one after the other. I'm only highlighting the most important uses, and at the end of the webinar I do hope to get from you a list of the plants which you think from this are most widely available. I'm repeating this several times so that in the future webinars I can mention more about those plants which are available for you. So this is specifically got an action on semen, on the sperm. It increases the output. It works in the reproductive system as well as in the brain, and it's used in neurological disorders like Parkinson's. So I'm sure you must be aware of this particular fruit. Can you identify this fruit? It's used as a vegetable. Exactly. So this is bitter gourd. It's called as caravella, and it's a laxative purgative. It reduces kapha and pitta. It's useful in blood disorders. It's a good source of iron, but it can reduce semen and sperm. So it's good for supportive as a diet in diabetes, although it doesn't have very profound effects on the blood sugar. A lot of people advise this for controlling blood sugar, but it doesn't have such a strong pharmacological activity, but it's certainly supportive, and it can purify the blood. So it works on the Rakta Dhatu, effects on mala and the urine, skin and fat, diabetes, skin diseases, ulcers, and intestinal diseases. So this is the bit. Now here's a very interesting plant. Does anybody identify this? I don't know whether this is available. And you can see that the shape of the leaf is like the cross section of the brain. Okay, please look at it carefully. You can see that the leaves look like, if you just slice the brain, then you get exactly. It is Centella asiatica. So it's a nervine tonic. It's used to improve now the brain and the functions of the brain. It's all the leaves are also used as a vegetable in India. So it's good for the brain. It's kapha pitta shamana. So again, you can see there's a difference between drugs which work on the mind and on the brain. So on the mind, there are drugs which work on mental functions, and then there are other herbs which work on actually the nervous system. If you look at herbs like jatamansi and ashwagandha, they all work on the mind, whereas this particular plant has a more profound action on the nervous system, on the brain and the nerves as such. So that's the difference. So apart from its use in neurological disorders, it's also helpful in skin diseases, in diabetes as a supportive medicine, and it's very good to use regularly as even a vegetable. The leaves can be used as a dish, side dish. Just crush the leaves and use them. So here is again a very interesting herb. I'm not sure whether you know about this. This is called as Rubia cordifolia. And this is known in Sanskrit as manjishta. It's a very strong blood purifying agent. It's helpful in diseases of the skin as well as rheumatoid arthritis. So its root have a typical reddish tinge. It's very reddish in color, and this is a weak stem plant. You can see it's hot in potency. It improves his voice and complexion, specifies kapha, and it's basically used in diseases that involve problem with the blood. So it's a strong blood purifying agent. So I don't know whether this plant is familiar to you. Does anybody know about this plant? It's very specific for the blood. And because blood is implied in skin disease and joint disease, there is derangement of the blood. Okay, so that's good. So I think in the UK, a lot of these plants are available. Maybe not in a fresh form, but it's raw drugs. So that's good enough. And this can be used in a wide range of conditions. Exactly. So here is the next plant. This is again a very interesting plant. This is called as Vitex negundo. So the leaves of this plant are very helpful, again, along with castor. So we have found this to be extremely, very, very useful. Vitex plus castor leaves are extremely useful for low back pain. So this is again after castor, very specific for relief from low back pain. And also another interesting finding is that there has been research which showed that this plant is helpful as a supportive medicine for management of epilepsy. Because in epilepsy, we use an allopathic medicine called phenytoin, which when administered in large doses can produce serious side effects. So if you can add Vitex negundo along with phenytoin, it has been found that the effect of phenytoin is enhanced, which means you need to give only half the dosage of phenytoin to get the result of the full dose. So this is actually a plant which is very helpful and supportive to even modern drugs in the management of seizures. Milder cases of seizures or epilepsy, this plant itself is helpful. So this is scatu and bitter, and it's light and dry and hot, and it's good for the eyes, it is good for wounds, and it's good for the hair, and it's helpful for colic and also in epilepsy. As you can see, it's mentioned the management of epilepsy. It's very, very helpful. And we make a special preparation in India. The juice of the leaves with castor oil is very helpful in the management of low back pain. So that's about Nirgundi. Vitex negundo, you can see its specific action on the Mamsa Dhatu, muscles, nerves, and joints, and the neurological system. Again, this is a plant that has only effect on the neurological level, not on the mental, psychological level. And it's very good in muscles pain. In sciatica, it can help in pain relief from sciatica. It's a muscle relaxant. And so its external use as a hot pack is very popular in Ayurveda. So here's another plant, very interesting. It's called as Bergenia ligulata, and in Sanskrit it means a stone breaker. So this is one of the plants very specifically used for urinary or bladder stones. So this plant is bitter and astringent, and it's light and unctuous and very sharp, and it is very cold, but still it's a very extremely useful for cleansing the bladder and breaking the urinary stones. We already looked at another herb called Gokshura tribulus, which is helpful as a diuretic. But the effect of this plant is that it's not just a diuretic, but it can also be helpful in calculi in treatment of stones. And it's generally also used in combination with other herbs for other diseases that affect the organs of the pelvic region. So this is in Sanskrit, Pashana Bheda means the stone breaker. And so here is the summary. It's working as a diuretic. It works on the urinary system and on urinary and kidney calcium. So next is again a vegetable. This is called as Coccinia indica. The fruits are used medicinally. I'm sorry, this is a different plant. I'm sorry about that. This is actually a different species. I made a mistake. This is called in Ayurveda as patola, not coccinia, trichosanthus. So this plant is used in skin diseases. It's very effective in skin diseases, in malaria, and such other conditions in which cleansing of the blood is needed. This plant is also a mild, it's a laxative, it is digestive, it removes the doshas from the system, it pacifies all the three doshas, useful in cough and disorders of the blood, fever, as well as worms. So it works on rasa and rakta dhatus, it's a laxative, and there are some formulations in Ayurveda in which this is a main ingredient which is used for cleaning the system before giving treatments in skin diseases. So here is another important plant in Ayurveda called as long pepper, Piper long. So long pepper is important because it enhances Do you mean patola? Yes, you can, but you must use other herbs like vidanga, which is Embelia ribes, which we discussed yesterday. You must use it in combination with other herbs. And also garlic is also good in deworming. So in Ayurveda we give a combination of herbs, and which this is very helpful in cleansing the bowels of worms, but not by itself, but in combination. So next we have long pepper, and long pepper, I'm only highlighting the most important uses because in Ayurveda in our school we study about herbs for nearly 2 years, and it takes quite a long time to understand all their complex uses. But I am highlighting in a couple of webinars the most important properties of these plants. So if you look at long pepper, what does it do? It is a very powerful liver tonic for liver regeneration. So after treating liver failure cases, after the first phase of treatment, this plant is administered ayana for regeneration of the liver cells. And this plant is also very good for bronchial asthma. It's useful and helpful to prevent recurrence of bronchial asthma. It can strengthen the lungs. It's also very helpful in the management of rheumatoid arthritis. So actually what is done is the fruits are powdered, and the powder is taken in increasing doses. So on the first day we take one fruit, then it goes on up to 15, and then it comes back down, it's tapered again to one fruit, and it takes about 30 days to complete this treatment, and the patient has to be on strict diet. And if you do this Rasayana treatment of Pipali or long pepper, then you are able to regenerate the liver and then strengthen the lungs as well as the joints that have suffered the impact of disease. Yet another important uh, activity of long pepper is that it can enhance absorption of other medicines. So it increases the bioavailability of other medicines. So long pepper is usually added, the powder is added to all medicines at the end, so that whatever medicine we are taking is better absorbed by the body. So these are some of the most important uses of long pepper. Its regular use is not recommended unless for specific medicinal uses. It's hot, it improves semen, it's enhancing digestion, and it is specifying vata and kapha. So it's useful in liver diseases and respiratory diseases. So this is Piper longum, slightly laxative. It acts on the lungs, joints, and liver. And the piperine is a major ingredient, which is a known bioavailability enhancer, which means it improves the availability of all medicines. It has been found that even modern medicines are absorbed better if you add piper longum powder to it. So it's indicated in breathing problems, in cough, in skin disease, rheumatic fever, anemia, and TB. So here's the next plant, which is a very nervine tonic. So we are looking at, it would be good if you later look at these plants and find out on which organs each of these plants act. So we had brain and mind and nerves. So in Ayurveda, it's very interesting. The plants have specific action on body parts. There are plants which work on mind, plants which work on brain, and plants which specifically work on nerves separately. And so here is a plant which is working on the nerves, and so it's used in neurological diseases. So it is strength, it's a very soothing herb for the nerves. It can cause neuroregeneration. So if the earlier herb, long pepper, could regenerate the liver, then this is a plant that can regenerate the nerve. So this is prasarini, and you can see the plant here. So the botanical name is Pederia foetida. It's got a strange smell, and it works on the muscles and nerves of the upper limbs, especially problems related to cervical spondylosis and the brachial plexus. This plant has been found to be very effective. So next we have another diuretic, which is called as Punarnava in Sanskrit. Punarnava means new again, so which shows that this plant has tremendous rejuvenative properties. And it specifically works on the urinary system. It's a diuretic, and it also specifically helps to remove edema, generalized edema. It's also a very powerful medicine in the management of anemia. So we can see Gokshura or Tribulus was another diuretic plant, and along with this, exactly, yes. It is in fact used to regulate blood pressure in Ayurveda. So Arjuna, Punarnava, these are all plants which are used in combination for management of blood pressure. So this plant is slightly laxative, it works in the urinary system, it has got a systemic action. That's the difference between Gokshura and Punarnava. Gokshura has an ability to only cleanse the urinary system. It doesn't have that much of an impact on the whole body. So if you have whole body swelling, then Punarnava has a much better action. So some of the other plants we can just rush through because they are not really, they have very specific uses, but the most important ones we had discussed in the previous webinar. So I'm going to very quickly go through the remaining plants, and later you can look at the slides and go deeper. So this is a plant which is a famous, I mentioned about this maybe in a previous webinars, called Sarpagandha. So this was one of the first plants to be studied scientifically in Ayurveda, and in modern medicine developed a drug called reserpine and serpentine from this herb, which were found to be useful in blood pressure. So this is the actual Ayurvedic medicine for blood pressure. So if you ask if is there otherwise only supportive in blood pressure, is there a herb in Ayurveda which can bring down blood pressure strongly, then you have to say that this is Sarpagandha. The only problem is that you must be very careful when using Sarpagandha. If you are not careful, you can produce unwanted side effects. So it is used in moderation and in combination with other herbs, and this is well known to reduce blood pressure. And even modern scientists developed some of the first medicines for blood pressure were developed from Sarpagandha. So it works in the brain and the heart. It's a diuretic and a laxative, and these are the chemicals. It's helpful in insomnia, loss of sleep, in blood pressure, in psychological disorders, and also in epilepsy. There's a problem. I'm not able to see the next picture. I hope it will show up soon. So we have again another important plant which works on the brain. Yes, and that slide is just showing up now. And that is Shankhapushpi. This plant is known so because of the conch-shaped flower, or conch. You know, conch is the shell, which has a white color, and the flowers of this plant has a white color, so it is called as a conch flower. So it is convolvulus pluricalis. This is a herb which is used for management of conditions like schizophrenia. So it brings it clears the mind, and it can open up your higher mental faculties. And so this is a plant which works really on the higher mental functions. So it improves intellect, it improves semen, it's a rejuvenative, it can improve higher mental functions like memory, complex. And in India, a lot of products have come out of this called Shankapushpi for improving memory and intelligence. It's given for children. The technical name is convolvulus pluricollis, and it works on the Majja Dhatu. It's a laxative, it works on brain and heart, and this is Shankapushpi. So you can see it's more than the brain. I hope you're able to make these differences. Plants which work only on the brain, which work only on the nerves, also on mental functions, and some herbs specifically work on higher mental functions. And Shankarpushpi is one such herb which works on the higher mental functions. So today we will be concluding our webinar with the next one or two plants, and fortunately a little bit of difficulty with the slides, yes. So here is the next slide, and this is not a herb, this is a exudate from the rocks. So in some rocks you will find some minerals coming out as a secretion, and this is very blackish, and this is called in Ayurveda Shilajatu. Has anybody Shilajatu? It's such an important medicine in Ayurveda. It is a sana, rejuvenative, and especially if there is a medicine which can, yes, but it's also extremely good for diabetes. It's also good for the reproductive system. So it is used by males as an approach. So it improves the quality of the semen, it improves of the male reproductive system. So you must have noticed that in Ayurveda there are so many herbs which are working on the male reproductive system. Today it's quite a few of them, and some specific to the female reproductive. But this plant is basically known for its ability to, it's also very helpful in kidney diseases. It has the ability to rejuvenate the kidney. Find that there's arjuna for the heart, and you have herbs like kumari and pipali for the liver, and herbs like pipali and for the lung, and so for kidney also herbs. And this is a herb which is very good for revived kidney function. This is actually not a herb. So it's used in diabetes, in psychosis, in urinary stone, in edema, skin diseases, as well as in epilepsy. But if you look at properties, works in the urinary system, the skin and the muscles, and diabetes, it's very good in treating diabetes and urinary tract infections and in edema. So this is a very, very vegetable. Can you identify this? Oh, I'm not with the word you. Yes. Yes, it is. It is similar. It's because of the source from the Bible. So you can see here that mumio is found. So they're very similar. Yes, exactly. So that's the right thing. So it's very similar, but there's slight differences. So here's the next plant, which will probably be the last one which we are discussing today. And in our next webinar, we will summarize and look at some combinations and the cleansing herbs. So can you identify this plant? It's a very common vegetable. No. Can you look at it closely? So in India, it's known as the drumstick. The fruits are long and like a stick to beat the drums. So it's used as a vegetable. It's called in Sanskrit as shigru. It's digestive stimulant, it's an appetizer, and it's very helpful in the management of swelling and abscess. And I want to mention about a very interesting use. The bark of this plant is a very good remedy for urinary stones. It's very strong that if you are not careful, then it can cause bleeding through the urinary tract. So you have to use it along with juice of ash gourd. I hope you are all aware of ash gourd. So juice of ash gourd along with drumstick bark can actually help to flush out urinary stones. So this is one of the important uses of the bark. But the bark is so strong that even if when you try to take out the bark, especially the root bark is even more powerful. You can feel that your eyes will water. It's really very strong. And the leaves we know are very good for management of anemia. And it's a poor man's food for anemia. The leaves are very helpful source of iron, and the fruits are known for being an aphrodisiac. It improves the quality of the male reproductive system. So I think that is all for today. This is Moringa oleifera, which is good for the eyes, the heart, and the skin. And muscle pain, bleeding disorders, skin diseases, kidney stones, and it's a slight laxative. So we have looked at some of the major medicinal plants of Ayurveda. Some more plants remain, which we will cover in the next class. So in the last part of I will explain the remaining plants very briefly, and then also some important nations. And in the meantime, I would like to hear from you about availability of the herbs in your region so that I can plan uh, to use those herbs which you are likely to obtain, because after this module we have pharmaceuticals. After one more webinar we have pharmaceuticals, and in the pharmaceuticals we will look at medicines, how to actually make medicines which you can use. And so at that time, before that time, I need to get a feedback on which herbs you think are available, which you can get in your place. So I'll try to discuss mostly about those herbs and not the herbs that may not be available. So with that, we conclude today's webinar. And please let me know if there are any questions.